One bad decision can set you back years, but the right one can change everything. This audiobook will rewire your mind to think faster, stay unshakable under pressure, and make decisions that push you toward unstoppable success. Becoming Unbeatable. Audiobook. Introduction. In today's fast-paced world, the difference between success and failure often comes down to split-second decisions. Those who rise to the top aren't necessarily the smartest or most talented. They're the ones who maintain clarity when others lose focus, who act decisively when others freeze, and who harness pressure instead of buckling under it. Every day, countless individuals face moments that could change their lives. A business executive contemplates $1 million deal while the clock ticks down. A surgeon encounters an unexpected complication in the operating room. A parent must make an instant choice that will impact their child's future. These moments don't announce themselves with fanfare. They emerge suddenly, demanding immediate action. The human brain, despite its remarkable capabilities, often betrays its owner in these crucial moments. Fear triggers the release of stress hormones. Doubt clouds judgment. The weight of potential consequences creates mental paralysis. These natural responses, left unchecked, can derail even the most promising opportunities. But there exists a select group of individuals who have mastered the art of clear thinking under pressure. They've developed mental frameworks that transform chaos into clarity, pressure into performance, and challenges into opportunities. These aren't innate gifts, they're learned skills, carefully honed through understanding and practice. This mastery isn't reserved for a chosen few. The same techniques used by championship athletes, battlefield commanders, and industry titans can be learned, adapted, and applied by anyone willing to invest in their mental development. Through proven strategies and real-world applications, this transformation is not just possible, it's inevitable for those who commit to the journey. Chapter 1. Why most people crack under pressure. The room falls silent as you stand there, heart thundering against your ribcage. Time seems to slow down, yet paradoxically, you feel the crushing weight of each passing second. Your palms are slick with sweat, your mouth dry as desert sand. In this moment, everything you've worked for hangs in the balance. One decision, one move, one response that could alter the entire trajectory of your life. This isn't just about making choices. It's about who you become when the stakes are highest. When the pressure mounts and others crumble, will you maintain your composure, or will you join the ranks of those who let crucial moments slip through their trembling fingers? The human brain, magnificent as it is, harbors a fundamental design flaw when it comes to high-pressure situations. Under stress, the amygdala, our brain's threat detection center, floods our system with stress hormones, effectively shutting down the prefrontal cortex, where rational decision-making occurs. This biological response, evolved to protect us from prehistoric dangers, now betrays us in boardrooms, competitive arenas, and critical life moments. Consider what happens in your body during these high-stakes situations. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow, and your muscles tense. These physical responses trigger a cascade of mental effects: racing thoughts, tunnel vision, and impaired judgment. It's a perfect storm that transforms even the most capable individuals into shadows of themselves. Yet, some individuals seem to defy this natural response. They maintain crystal clarity when chaos erupts around them. The secret lies not in avoiding pressure, but in reconditioning how your brain interprets and responds to it. Take Neil Armstrong's historic moon landing in 1969. As the lunar module descended toward the moon's surface, multiple alarms blared, warning of computer overload. The guidance computer was failing, fuel was running low, and millions watched from Earth. In those crucial moments, Armstrong's heart rate remained remarkably steady at 150 beats per minute, elevated but controlled. Instead of succumbing to panic, he manually piloted the craft, scanning the lunar surface for a safe landing spot while processing a flood of critical information. What made this possible? Armstrong's extensive training had rewired his brain's response to pressure. Through thousands of simulations and real flight experiences, he had developed what psychologists call stress inoculation. the ability to maintain cognitive function under extreme conditions. This same principle applies to modern-day pressure situations. Dr. Cyan Baylock, a cognitive scientist and expert in performance under pressure, has demonstrated through extensive research that the brain can be trained to perform better under stress. Her studies show that individuals who practice under mild stress conditions consistently outperform those who practice in relaxed states when it comes to high-pressure situations. The transformation begins with understanding that pressure itself isn't the enemy. It's your relationship with it that determines the outcome. Top performers across every field have learned to harness pressure as a performance enhancer rather than a performance destroyer. The science behind this transformation is fascinating. When you consciously control your response to pressure, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calming mechanism. This triggers a release of neurotransmitters that combat stress hormones, allowing your prefrontal cortex to remain online and functional. Look at the story of Leo, a rookie firefighter faced with a nightmare scenario during his first solo rescue operation. Trapped in a burning building with a civilian, smoke thick enough to cut visibility to mere inches, he found himself at a crossroads where panic could have proved fatal. Instead of surrendering to fear, Leo employed the techniques he had practiced countless times in training. First, he controlled his breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. This simple act activated his parasympathetic nervous system, creating a moment of clarity amid chaos. Next, he conducted a systematic assessment of his surroundings, breaking down the overwhelming situation into manageable pieces. Finally, he executed a step-by-step plan, leading both himself and the civilian to safety. Leo's success wasn't luck. It was the result of deliberate mental conditioning. He had trained his brain to associate pressure with heightened awareness rather than panic. This same transformation is available to anyone willing to put in the work. The key lies in systematic exposure to pressure situations while maintaining cognitive control. This creates new neural pathways that override the default stress response. Think of it as reprogramming your brain's operating system, replacing the outdated panic protocol with a more sophisticated pressure performance protocol. Here are the core components of this transformation. Controlled breathing, the foundation of pressure management. Proper breathing techniques literally change your brain chemistry, reducing cortisol levels and enhancing cognitive function. Cognitive reframing, training yourself to view pressure as a challenge rather than a threat. This subtle shift in perspective changes how your brain processes stress hormones. Exposure training, gradually increasing exposure to pressure situations while maintaining composure. This builds what psychologists call pressure resistance. The process begins with small steps that compound into remarkable results. A public speaker who once froze before audiences learns to channel nervous energy into dynamic presence. A surgeon who felt overwhelmed by complicated procedures develops the ability to think clearly through any challenge. A parent facing critical decisions finds clarity where there was once only anxiety. Your challenge for this week is to deliberately seek out small pressure situations, opportunities to practice these techniques in controlled environments. Choose 3 activities that push you slightly outside your comfort zone. Volunteer to lead a presentation at work, even if public speaking makes you nervous. Practice your breathing techniques before and during the presentation. Set a timer for an important task, creating artificial pressure to test your focus and decision-making. Engage in a competitive activity where the stakes feel real but manageable. The key is to start small and build progressively. Each exposure to pressure becomes an opportunity to strengthen your mental resilience. Track your physical and mental responses, noting improvements in your ability to maintain clarity under stress. Remember, pressure is not your enemy. It's your training ground for excellence. Every high-stakes moment is an opportunity to prove to yourself that you can think clearly when others lose focus, act decisively when others hesitate, and perform at your best when the pressure is highest. Your transformation begins now. Take that first step into controlled pressure, and watch as your capacity for clear thinking under stress expands. The next time you face a moment that matters, you won't just survive, you'll thrive. Chapter 2. Your brain is lying to you. Your brain, that remarkable 3-pound universe between your ears, is playing tricks on you right now. As you hear these words, neural pathways are firing, creating patterns and making assumptions that may have nothing to do with reality. Every decision you make, every instinct you trust, and every fact you believe could be the product of sophisticated self-deception. The human mind evolved to prioritize speed over accuracy, survival over truth. This worked well when our ancestors needed quick decisions about fight or flight. But in today's complex world, these mental shortcuts can lead to devastating mistakes. Your brain isn't just occasionally wrong, it's systematically biased in ways that can derail your most important choices. The story of NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter stands as a monumental testament to how even the brightest minds can fall victim to cognitive blindness. In 1999, a team of elite scientists and engineers watched helplessly as their $125 million spacecraft disappeared into the Martian atmosphere, disintegrating due to a simple unit conversion error. The ground crew had used English units, pounds, while the spacecraft's computer expected metric units, newtons. But the real failure wasn't mathematical. It was psychological. Multiple engineers had opportunities to catch this error, but confirmation bias led them to see what they expected to see. When data suggested something might be wrong, they unconsciously filtered it out, trusting their assumptions instead of questioning their calculations. The result? A quarter-century of scientific work literally went up in smoke. This catastrophic error illustrates 3 fundamental flaws in human thinking: confirmation bias, seeking information that supports our existing beliefs; overconfidence bias, overestimating our ability to be right; and the curse of expertise, becoming so specialized that we miss obvious errors. These aren't just problems for rocket scientists. They're hardwired into every human brain. Dr. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel laureate and pioneer in behavioral economics, has demonstrated through decades of research how these cognitive biases systematically distort our decision-making. His work reveals that our minds operate on 2 systems: System 1, fast, intuitive, and emotional, and System 2, slower, more deliberative, and logical. While System 1 helps us navigate daily life, it's also prone to systematic errors that System 2 often fails to catch. Consider the story of Mia, a veteran stock trader with 15 years of experience. In 2021, she spotted what seemed like an unmistakable market pattern, one she'd seen dozens of times before. Every instinct told her this was a golden opportunity. She invested half her life savings, confident in her expertise and pattern recognition skills. What Mia didn't realize was that her brain was selectively filtering information. She saw the patterns she wanted to see, ignored contradictory data, and fell victim to the narrative fallacy, our tendency to create stories that explain random events. When the market moved against her position, she lost nearly everything. The pattern she'd been so sure about? It was an illusion created by her own mind. After this devastating loss, Mia transformed her approach to decision-making. She developed a systematic process to challenge her own assumptions. Before every trade, she now forces herself to list 3 reasons why her analysis might be wrong. She seeks out dissenting opinions and treats her initial instincts with healthy skepticism. Most importantly, she's learned that feeling certain about something is often a red flag, a signal that her brain might be taking dangerous shortcuts. The implications of cognitive bias extend far beyond trading floors and space missions. These mental traps influence every aspect of life or relationships. You might stay in a failing relationship because of sunk cost fallacy, believing past investment justifies future commitment. Career. Anchoring bias might keep you from negotiating a fair salary because you're too focused on your current pay rate. Health. Optimism. Bias could lead you to underestimate health risks and skip important preventive care. The good news is that while you can't eliminate these biases, you can learn to recognize and counteract them. The key is developing what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about your thinking. This means actively questioning your assumptions, seeking contrary evidence, and accepting that your strongest convictions might be wrong. Your brain will continue generating illusions, making assumptions, and taking shortcuts. But now you have a choice. You can let these cognitive biases silently shape your decisions, or you can fight back with conscious awareness and systematic doubt. For the next week, challenge yourself to become a detective of your own mind. Every time you feel absolutely certain about something, stop and ask, what if I'm wrong? What evidence might I be ignoring? What assumptions am I making? Write down your answers. This simple practice can help you catch mental errors before they catch you. Remember, the most dangerous biases are the ones you don't know you have. Your journey to better decision-making begins with accepting that your brain, remarkable as it is, isn't always telling you the truth. Chapter 3. The Emotional Neutrality Paradox. Every day, countless well-meaning voices tell you to follow your heart and trust your gut. This seemingly wise advice has become so ingrained in modern culture that questioning it feels almost sacrilegious. But this emotional-driven decision-making is precisely what keeps you trapped in cycles of regret, impulsive choices, and missed opportunities. Think about your last major decision. Was it truly made with clear judgment, or was it hijacked by fear, excitement, or anger? The truth is, emotions are like powerful waves. They can either drown you or propel you forward, depending on how you harness them. The real masters of decision-making, from ancient philosophers to modern strategists, understand a crucial truth. Emotions are valuable signals, but dangerous drivers. They feel everything deeply, but refuse to let those feelings dictate their actions. This is emotional neutrality, and it's the hidden superpower behind history's greatest decisions. Observe the remarkable story of Seneca, the Stoic philosopher and advisor to Roman Emperor Nero. When Nero, in a fit of paranoid rage, sentenced Seneca to death, witnesses expected the typical human response: fear, anger, desperate pleading. Instead, they saw something extraordinary. Seneca received his death sentence with perfect composure, using his final hours to console his grieving friends and document philosophical insights that would influence thinkers for centuries. This wasn't emotional suppression. Seneca surely felt the full weight of his situation. Rather, it was the ultimate demonstration of emotional neutrality, feeling everything while remaining in complete control of his responses. His calm acceptance transformed what could have been a moment of terror into one of profound teaching and dignity. Modern neuroscience helps us understand why emotional neutrality is so powerful. When emotions run high, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, can override the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational thinking. This amygdala hijack evolved to help our ancestors survive immediate physical dangers, but in today's complex world, it often leads to catastrophic decisions. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, a pioneering neuroscientist, has demonstrated through extensive research that emotions aren't fixed reactions, but constructed experiences. This means we have far more control over our emotional responses than previously thought. The key isn't suppressing emotions, but creating space between feeling and action. The power of emotional neutrality becomes even more evident in high-stakes negotiations. Former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss has repeatedly emphasized that the most dangerous moment in any negotiation is when emotions start driving decisions. His most successful negotiations weren't won through force or manipulation, but through maintaining tactical empathy while staying emotionally neutral. Look at the story of Jacob, CEO of a rising tech startup, who faced a defining moment during a shareholders' meeting. A prominent investor, frustrated by a temporary dip in company value, launched into a public attack on Jacob's leadership. The room tensed, waiting for the typical defensive response that could have fractured investor confidence. Instead, Jacob demonstrated the power of emotional neutrality. He acknowledged the investor's concerns without becoming defensive, separated the emotional charges from the factual claims, and responded with data-driven insights about the company's long-term strategy. What could have become a catastrophic confrontation turned into a productive dialogue that actually strengthened investor trust. "I felt everything he was saying," Jacob later revealed. "The anger, the fear of losing control, the impulse to fight back. But I had trained myself to create a pause between feeling and responding. In that pause, I could choose my response rather than react from emotion. This is the essence of emotional neutrality, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of response. It's about developing what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to identify and understand nuanced emotional states without being controlled by them. The process of developing emotional neutrality involves three core practices: recognition, learning to identify emotions as they arise, understanding their triggers, and acknowledging them without judgment. This creates the crucial space between stimulus and response. Analysis, examining emotional reactions for what they really are, often complex mixtures of past experiences, current stresses, and future fears. This helps separate valid emotional signals from emotional noise. Strategic response, choosing actions based on long-term objectives rather than immediate emotional relief. This transforms emotional energy into purposeful action. A powerful example comes from the world of professional poker. Annie Duke, former World Series of Poker champion, describes how emotional neutrality separates great players from average ones. Average players get excited by wins and tilted by losses, leading to increasingly poor decisions. Champions maintain emotional awareness while making decisions based purely on probability and game theory. The implications for daily life are profound. In relationships, emotional neutrality allows you to address conflicts productively, rather than escalating them through reactive behavior. In career decisions, it helps you evaluate opportunities objectively, rather than being swayed by fear or overconfidence. In personal growth, it enables you to face uncomfortable truths without defensive reactions. The practice of emotional neutrality becomes particularly powerful in conflict situations. When someone attacks you personally, emotional neutrality allows you to respond to the substance of their argument rather than their tone. When facing a crisis, it helps you focus on solutions rather than getting lost in panic or blame. Your challenge this week is simple but profound. When faced with any strong emotional reaction, pause for 10 seconds before responding. In those 10 seconds, name the emotion you're feeling and ask yourself, is my planned response being driven by this emotion or by my long-term objectives? This simple practice begins the journey toward emotional neutrality and better decision-making. Remember, emotions aren't your enemy. They're valuable signals about what matters to you. The goal isn't to become an emotionless robot, but to develop the ability to feel deeply while choosing your responses wisely. This is the true path to emotional intelligence and decision-making mastery. Chapter 4. The Overthinking Trap. When analysis becomes paralysis. You've probably heard that thinking things through is a sign of intelligence. But what if overthinking is actually a silent killer of success? Every day, countless opportunities slip away while people remain frozen in analysis, weighing options until the moment passes. Overthinking isn't careful planning. It's a form of self-sabotage that masquerades as wisdom. When the mind gets caught in recursive loops of analysis, it creates a paradox. The more you think, the less clarity you have. This phenomenon, known in psychology as analysis paralysis, actually degrades the quality of decision-making rather than improving it. The brain becomes overwhelmed with possibilities, leading to decision fatigue and diminished judgment. The story of chess grandmaster Bobby Fischer provides a powerful illustration of the advantage that comes from decisive thinking over excessive analysis. During the 1972 World Championship match against Boris Spassky, Fischer demonstrated an almost supernatural ability to make complex decisions with remarkable speed. While Spassky fell into the trap of overanalyzing each move, sometimes spending precious minutes contemplating all possible outcomes, Fischer relied on his deeply trained intuition to make rapid, decisive moves. In one particularly crucial game, Fischer made what appeared to be a risky move after just seconds of consideration. Spectators were bewildered, and Spassky visibly struggled, spending nearly 20 minutes analyzing the position. The extended deliberation not only consumed Spassky's limited time, but also drained his mental energy. Fischer's quick, confident decision proved devastating, creating a position that Spassky's exhaustive analysis failed to solve. This game became a turning point in the match, demonstrating how overthinking can be a competitive disadvantage even at the highest levels of strategic thinking. Modern neuroscience helps explain why excessive analysis can be counterproductive. Research shows that the brain's decision-making centers actually become less effective when overloaded with information. It's similar to how a computer slows down when too many programs are running simultaneously. The processing power gets divided and diminished. The solution lies in setting clear decision boundaries, knowing when to analyze and when to act. High performers across various fields use specific strategies to prevent overthinking. The 80% rule has emerged as a powerful antidote to analysis paralysis. When you have 80% of the relevant information, it's time to make the call. Waiting for that final 20% often costs more in lost opportunities than it provides in additional insight. Take the story of Naomi, a brilliant marketing strategist who dreamed of launching her own agency. For 2 years, she remained trapped in what she called research mode, constantly analyzing market conditions, potential client bases, and competitive landscapes. She created spreadsheet after spreadsheet, read countless business books, and attended every relevant seminar she could find. The turning point came when a mentor introduced her to the concept of decision boundaries. They set up a simple system. Any business decision that didn't involve major financial risk would be made within 60 seconds. Larger decisions got a maximum of 24 hours. The results were transformative. Within 1 month of implementing these decision boundaries, Naomi had launched her agency, secured her first 2 clients, and started generating revenue. The imperfect action she took proved far more valuable than the perfect plan she had been trying to create. Looking back, she says, I realized that all that analysis was just fear wearing a mask of thoroughness. Her story illustrates a crucial truth. Overthinking isn't about being careful or strategic. It's about avoiding the discomfort of commitment and the possibility of failure. The most successful people aren't those who never make mistakes. They're the ones who make decisions promptly and adjust course based on real-world feedback rather than endless mental simulation. The brain can be trained to overcome its tendency toward overthinking. Just as a muscle grows stronger through consistent exercise, decisive thinking becomes more natural with practice. The key is to start with small decisions and gradually work up to bigger ones, always respecting the decision boundaries you've set. Chapter 5. The Power of Slowing Down Time. The Olympic 100-meter final in 2004 held more than just a race. It contained a profound lesson about the human mind's relationship with time and pressure. As Asafa Powell, the clear favorite, positioned himself at the starting blocks, decades of training coursed through his muscles. The stadium hummed with anticipation. In those crucial milliseconds after the starting gun, Powell's mind accelerated faster than his body, rushing through his carefully honed technique. The result? A 5th-place finish that shocked the sporting world. But across the track, Justin Gatlin experienced those same moments differently. Through specialized mental training, he had developed the ability to perceive time differently under pressure. While others felt the moment compress into a blur of adrenaline, Gatlin saw everything with unusual clarity. Each stride, each breath, each subtle shift in position. This wasn't just athletic prowess. It was a demonstration of an extraordinary mental capability that separates elite performers from everyone else. This phenomenon, often called time dilation or temporal expansion, isn't limited to sports. The human brain has a remarkable ability to adjust its perception of time, particularly in high-pressure situations. Neuroscientists studying this effect have discovered that when properly trained, the brain can process information more efficiently, creating the sensation that time is moving more slowly, while maintaining or even improving decision-making capabilities. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger's miraculous landing on the Hudson River provides one of the most dramatic examples of this ability in action. On January 15, 2009, when both engines of U.S. Airways Flight 1549 failed after striking a flock of birds, Sullenberger had just 208 seconds to assess the situation, consider his options, and execute a water landing, something he had never done in a commercial aircraft. In interviews afterward, Sullenberger described experiencing those 3.5 minutes with remarkable clarity. While passengers panicked and flight attendants braced for impact, his perception of time expanded. He methodically worked through his options. Return to LaGuardia? Too far. Teterboro Airport, too risky. The Hudson. Difficult, but possible. Each decision, each adjustment, each communication with air traffic control unfolded with a surreal sense of composed awareness. The science behind this temporal mastery reveals fascinating insights about the brain's adaptability. Under normal circumstances, the brain processes about 40 sensory inputs per second. However, in high-stress situations, this processing capability can dramatically increase, creating the sensation that time is moving more slowly. This isn't just a passive response to danger. It's a trainable skill that can be developed and refined. Elite military units and emergency responders regularly train this ability through specialized exercises. They create controlled high-stress scenarios where operators must make complex decisions under pressure. Over time, these professionals develop the ability to maintain cognitive clarity even as their physiological stress responses activate. The key lies not in suppressing the body's natural response to pressure, but in training the mind to process information more efficiently during these heightened states. Consider the experience of Dr. James, a neurosurgeon who regularly performs high-risk procedures. Early in his career, he struggled with the intense pressure of brain surgery, where millimeters can mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Through deliberate practice in managing his perception of time, he developed what he calls surgical time, a state where complex procedures seem to unfold at a manageable pace, allowing for precise decision-making even in crisis moments. The turning point came when I realized that rushing wasn't about the actual time available, he explains. It was about my perception of time and my relationship with pressure. Once I learned to expand my awareness in critical moments, everything changed. Procedures that once felt overwhelming became manageable challenges. The techniques for developing this ability are surprisingly accessible. The foundation begins with breath control, specifically learning to maintain steady, rhythmic breathing even when under pressure. This helps regulate the autonomic nervous system, creating a physiological state conducive to clear thinking. Combined with focused attention exercises and gradual exposure to controlled stress, these practices can significantly enhance one's ability to maintain temporal clarity under pressure. The key to developing this skill lies in progressive training. Start with simple exercises in everyday situations. When facing a minor deadline or making a routine decision, practice intentionally slowing down your perception. Focus on your breathing, observe details in your environment, and resist the urge to rush. As this becomes natural, gradually apply the same techniques to more challenging situations. Some practical strategies include, during high-pressure moments, focus on specific sensory details: the weight of your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air, the sounds around you. This anchors your attention and helps expand your perception of time. Practice making decisions in increasingly challenging scenarios while maintaining steady breathing and clear awareness. This builds confidence in your ability to stay composed under pressure. Use visualization exercises to mentally rehearse high-stakes situations, training your brain to process information efficiently when real challenges arise. The benefits extend far beyond just handling pressure better. People who develop this skill report improved decision-making across all areas of life, enhanced creativity, and a greater sense of control over their responses to challenging situations. This capability isn't about slowing down the world. It's about expanding your capacity to process and respond to it effectively. When you can maintain clarity and composure in high-pressure moments, you gain a decisive advantage in any situation requiring quick, accurate decisions. The real power lies in making this skill automatic. Through consistent practice, the ability to expand time perception in crucial moments becomes a natural response rather than a conscious effort. This creates a foundation for exceptional performance under pressure, whether in professional challenges, personal crises, or any situation where clear thinking makes the difference between success and failure. Your opportunity to develop this skill begins with awareness. Notice how you currently experience time under pressure. Do you feel rushed? Does your thinking become clouded? These observations become the baseline from which you'll build your temporal mastery. Chapter 6. How to cut through noise and see what matters. In 1983, when Wall Street still operated primarily on gut instinct and market sentiment, Jim Simons made a decision that would revolutionize financial trading. Rather than following the crowd's emotional reactions to market swings, he chose to let pure mathematics guide his strategy. His colleagues thought he was crazy. After all, markets were driven by human behavior. How could cold equations possibly capture that complexity? But Simons, a former code breaker and mathematics professor, understood something fundamental about decision-making that most traders missed. Human judgment is consistently compromised by information overload and emotional bias. By developing sophisticated mathematical models that filtered out market noise and focused solely on meaningful patterns, he built Renaissance technologies into a powerhouse that would generate average annual returns of 66% over the next 3 decades. The triumph of Simons' approach wasn't just about mathematical brilliance, it demonstrated a crucial principle about how the human mind processes information. In an age of unprecedented data availability, the ability to filter signal from noise has become more valuable than raw intelligence or experience. Think about the stark contrast between Renaissance's systematic approach and the fate of long-term capital management, LTCM, another hedge fund run by brilliant minds including 2 Nobel laureates. While Renaissance thrived by ruthlessly filtering out market noise, LTCM's managers became overwhelmed by the complexity of their own models and market narratives. They lost billions in 1998 because they couldn't separate essential information from dangerous distractions. The human brain, despite its remarkable capabilities, was never designed to process the volume of information we encounter daily. Research has shown that the average person consumes about 34 gigabytes of information every day, equivalent to 100,000 words. This constant bombardment creates what psychology professor Sophie Leroy terms attention residue, the mental fog that occurs when too many inputs compete for our cognitive resources. This cognitive overload has real consequences. A study found that heavy multitaskers, who think they're processing multiple information streams efficiently, are actually worse at analyzing information and filtering out irrelevant details. They become more susceptible to interference from irrelevant environmental stimuli and demonstrate greater difficulty switching between tasks. Navy SEAL teams provide a compelling example of how elite performers handle information overload in life-or-death situations. Their training emphasizes what they call front-sight focus, the ability to identify and concentrate on mission-critical information while filtering out everything else. During complex operations, SEAL teams don't try to process every piece of available intelligence. Instead, they focus on specific, predetermined indicators that drive tactical decisions. This principle extends far beyond military operations. Top performers across fields share this ability to cut through information noise. Warren Buffett famously avoids watching daily market movements or reading short-term financial news, focusing instead on fundamental business values. Steve Jobs was known for his reality distortion field, his ability to filter out anything that didn't align with his core objectives. The key insight is that clarity doesn't come from processing more information. It comes from better filtering. Just as Simons' mathematical models stripped away market noise to reveal actionable patterns, successful decision-makers develop systematic ways to identify what matters and eliminate what doesn't. Michael, a tech executive, discovered this principle the hard way. Trying to stay on top of industry trends, competitor moves, and internal metrics, he found himself paralyzed by analysis paralysis. His breakthrough came when he implemented what he called his Essential 5 framework, identifying the 5 key metrics that truly drove his business outcomes and ignoring everything else. Within months, his decision-making speed doubled, while the quality of his choices improved dramatically. Similarly, Dr. Elena Thompson, a renowned emergency room physician, developed a systematic approach to filtering patient information during high-stress situations. Rather than trying to process every detail in a patient's history, she focused on specific vital indicators that would drive immediate treatment decisions. This approach not only improved her performance, but also reduced mental fatigue during long shifts. These examples illustrate a fundamental truth. In a world of infinite information, the ability to filter effectively becomes more valuable than the ability to absorb more data. The most successful decision makers don't try to process everything. They develop robust systems for identifying what matters and eliminating what doesn't. The noise isn't going away. If anything, it's increasing exponentially. But by learning to filter effectively, you can achieve the kind of clarity that marked Simon's success at Renaissance Technologies. Your challenge this week is to eliminate one major source of mental clutter, whether it's excessive news consumption, social media, or pointless debates, and replace it with focused thinking time. Watch how quickly your mind sharpens when you reduce the noise. Chapter 7. The 1-second rule that saves you from catastrophic mistakes. On January 15, 2009, Air France Flight 447 departed Rio de Janeiro bound for Paris. The routine overnight flight carried 228 passengers and crew, all of whom trusted in the sophisticated systems and experienced pilots to guide them safely across the Atlantic. But at 35,000 feet, the unthinkable happened. The aircraft's pitot tubes, critical sensors that measure airspeed, became blocked by ice crystals. This triggered a cascade of warnings and temporarily disabled the autopilot. In the darkness of the cockpit, confusion reigned. The junior co-pilot, Pierre-Cédric Bonin, faced with conflicting instrument readings and mounting pressure, made a fatal error. Instead of following the basic aviation principle of maintaining level flight while assessing the situation, he pulled back on the control stick, pointing the aircraft's nose upward. This instinctive reaction, made in a split second of panic, placed the Airbus A330 in an aerodynamic stall from which it never recovered. The investigation revealed a haunting truth. If Bonin had simply waited 1 second, just one single second, to suppress his initial impulse and think through the situation, he would have recognized the correct course of action. That missing second of clarity cost 228 lives. The tragedy of Flight 447 illustrates a fundamental truth about human decision-making. Our first instinctive reaction is often our worst enemy. Research has revealed why this happens. When faced with sudden stress or uncertainty, the brain's threat response system, centered in the amygdala, activates within milliseconds. This primitive part of our brain triggers immediate, reflexive responses before our prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought and analysis, can fully engage. This slight delay between emotional reaction and rational response, typically lasting between 0.5 to 1.5 seconds, represents a critical window where many catastrophic decisions are made. The world's most successful decision-makers have learned to recognize and utilize this gap. Warren Buffett, legendary for his investment acumen, demonstrates this principle masterfully. During the 2008 financial crisis, while other investors panic-sold their holdings as markets crashed, Buffett implemented his famous 1-second rule. Before making any major investment decision, he forced himself to pause and ask, "Will I regret this choice in 5 years?" This simple pause allowed him to make clear-headed decisions while others acted on fear, leading to some of his most profitable investments during the market's darkest hours. Similarly, former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss credits his success to the disciplined use of tactical pauses. In his most challenging negotiations, he would deliberately insert a 1-second pause before responding to demands or threats. This micro-delay allowed him to choose his words carefully and maintain control of highly volatile situations. The power of the 1-second rule extends beyond high-stakes professional scenarios. Carlos Rodriguez, a former MMA fighter competing in the UFC, learned this lesson the hard way. During a critical title elimination bout, his opponent began taunting him between exchanges. Rodriguez, known for his explosive power, took the bait. He rushed forward recklessly, abandoning his game plan in an emotional response to the provocation. The result? A knockout loss that set his career back years. After this devastating defeat, Rodriguez worked with a sports psychologist to develop what he called his pause protocol. Before any aggressive action, he would take a single deep breath, roughly 1 second, to assess his opponent's positioning and his own emotional state. This small change led to a remarkable transformation in his fighting style and a subsequent winning streak that culminated in a championship opportunity. The 1-second rule isn't about slow decision-making. It's about preventing impulsive mistakes while maintaining decisive action. Research has shown that implementing even a brief pause before responding to emotional triggers can reduce stress-induced errors by up to 40%. Chapter 8. Confidence without arrogance. The decision-making sweet spot. Building on the established narrative while maintaining the core themes of decision-making excellence, here's an expanded exploration of confidence versus overconfidence in critical choices. In 1912, the RMS Titanic represented the pinnacle of human achievement, a technological marvel deemed unsinkable by its creators. Captain Edward Smith, with 40 years of maritime experience, commanded what many considered the safest vessel ever built. This confidence, however, would prove deadly. Despite receiving 6 separate ice warnings on April 14th, the ship maintained its high speed of 22 knots through dangerous waters. The crew's overconfidence manifested in multiple ways. They carried only enough lifeboats for half the passengers, believing the ship's compartmentalized hull made evacuation scenarios unnecessary. When wireless operator Jack Phillips received an ice warning from the SS Californian, he famously replied, "Shut up, I'm busy," dismissing critical safety information because it didn't align with their assumptions of invulnerability. This catastrophic blend of hubris and dismissiveness resulted in the deaths of 1,500 passengers and crew, proving that overconfidence doesn't just cloud judgment, it kills. The Titanic disaster serves as a perfect metaphor for how overconfidence destroys decision-making in every arena of life. Whether in business, relationships, or personal development, the belief that we're immune to failure often precedes our greatest catastrophes. Modern psychology research has revealed that overconfidence operates through 3 distinct mechanisms: overestimation of abilities, overplacement, believing we're better than others, and overprecision, excessive certainty in our beliefs. Each of these distortions can sabotage decision-making in unique ways. The 1980s rivalry between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates perfectly illustrates this dynamic. In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh with Jobs at the helm, revolutionizing personal computing with its graphical user interface. Jobs' initial success, combined with his notorious reality distortion field, led to dangerous overconfidence. He dismissed the threat of Microsoft's Windows, believing Apple's superior design would always prevail. This overconfidence extended to his management style. He rejected valid criticism, ignored market signals, and alienated crucial allies. Bill Gates, conversely, exemplified a different approach. While supremely confident in his vision for Microsoft, he maintained what he called a positive paranoia, constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. When IBM approached Microsoft about an operating system, Gates didn't have one ready. Instead of letting pride prevent him from seizing the opportunity, he quickly acquired one from another company, modified it, and licensed it as MS-DOS. This blend of confidence and adaptability became Microsoft's hallmark. While Jobs was eventually forced out of Apple in 1985, though he would later return triumphantly, Gates built Microsoft into the world's most valuable company. The difference wasn't intelligence or innovation, it was the ability to balance confidence with humility. This pattern repeats across industries and eras. In 2007, Blockbuster CEO Jim Keyes declared, "Neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition." This overconfidence prevented Blockbuster from adapting to changing market conditions, leading to their bankruptcy in 2010. Netflix, meanwhile, maintained what CEO Reed Hastings calls informed captaincy, confident leadership tempered by constant learning and adaptation. The key to mastering this balance lies in understanding that true confidence isn't about certainty, it's about capability. It's not the belief that you'll always be right, but the knowledge that you can handle being wrong. This distinction separates genuine confidence from brittle arrogance. Mira, a promising young attorney at a prestigious law firm, learned this lesson the hard way. Fresh from graduating top of her class, she approached each case with absolute certainty in her analyses. When senior partners suggested alternative strategies, she dismissed their input, believing her fresh perspective superior to their outdated experience. This overconfidence culminated in a crucial employment discrimination case. Despite clear warning signs and suggestions from colleagues, Mira refused to adjust her strategy. The result? a devastating loss that cost her client millions and nearly derailed her career. The experience transformed her approach to decision-making. She developed a three-part system for calibrating confidence. First, she actively sought contrary opinions, especially from those with different perspectives. Rather than viewing disagreement as a threat to her confidence, she saw it as a way to strengthen her position. Second, she implemented what she called assumption audits, regularly reviewing her core beliefs about each case to identify potential blind spots. This practice helped her distinguish between confidence based on evidence and confidence based on ego. Third, she built a network of trusted advisors who had permission to challenge her thinking. This challenge circle provided crucial feedback while maintaining her decisive leadership style. The results were remarkable. Within 2 years, she became the youngest partner in her firm's history, known for combining bold strategy with thoughtful execution. Her transformation illustrates a crucial truth. The strongest decisions come from confidence tempered by humility. This balance allows leaders to move decisively while remaining adaptable, a combination that proves unbeatable in any field. The journey to this kind of balanced confidence requires specific tools and practices. Calibration exercises help you test your confidence against reality. Before making important decisions, rate your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10. Track these ratings against actual outcomes to identify patterns of over- or underconfidence. Stress testing involves actively seeking information that could prove your assumptions wrong. This isn't about undermining confidence, but about building genuine certainty through rigorous examination. The pre-mortem technique, developed by psychologist Gary Klein, involves imagining a future where your decision led to failure and working backward to identify potential pitfalls. This practice helps prevent overconfidence while strengthening valid confidence through thorough analysis. Chapter 9. Crisis Control. Turning Chaos into Clarity. On April 14, 1970, an oxygen tank exploded aboard Apollo 13, transforming a routine space mission into a desperate fight for survival. As alarms blared and systems failed, Flight Director Gene Kranz faced a situation that would have paralyzed most leaders. The spacecraft was 200,000 miles from Earth, losing power and oxygen, with 3 astronauts' lives hanging in the balance. Kranz's response in those critical moments would become legendary. Instead of succumbing to panic, he gathered his team and delivered a message that would define NASA's approach to crisis management. Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing. Over the next 4 days, Kranz and his team would face one seemingly impossible challenge after another. The spacecraft's main engine was unusable. Power had to be conserved. Carbon dioxide levels were rising to lethal levels. Each problem alone could have spelled disaster. Together, they created what appeared to be an insurmountable crisis. But Kranz maintained what psychologists now call strategic composure, the ability to channel stress into focused problem-solving rather than letting it trigger panic responses. He systematically broke down each challenge, prioritized immediate threats, and mobilized his team's expertise with precision. When engineers presented him with complex technical problems, Kranz would pause, process, and respond with clarity. I don't care about what anything was designed to do. I care about what it can do. This mindset transformed overwhelming obstacles into manageable challenges. The mission's success hinged on countless critical decisions. One wrong choice could have doomed the crew. Yet under Kranz's leadership, the team improvised solutions that defied conventional wisdom, including using the lunar module as a lifeboat and creating a makeshift carbon dioxide scrubber from spare parts. This capacity for clear thinking under extreme pressure isn't just valuable in space missions, it's essential for anyone facing life's inevitable crises. Modern neuroscience reveals that the human brain has 2 distinct response patterns to threat: the reactive circuit, triggering fight or flight responses, and the responsive circuit, enabling strategic thinking. Most people default to the reactive circuit during crises, leading to impulsive decisions and missed opportunities. But elite crisis managers like Kranz have learned to activate their responsive circuit, even under extreme stress. This doesn't mean suppressing fear, it means channeling it into focused action. Ernest Shackleton's 1914 Antarctic expedition provides another masterclass in crisis leadership. When his ship Endurance became trapped in pack ice, eventually being crushed and sinking, Shackleton faced a situation that would have broken most leaders. His crew was stranded on drifting ice, thousands of miles from civilization, in one of Earth's most hostile environments. Rather than letting the magnitude of the crisis overwhelm him, Shackleton maintained what he called serene control. He understood that his emotional state would directly influence his crew's chances of survival. When food ran low, he would theatrically throw away his own rations to boost morale. When hope seemed lost, he remained outwardly optimistic while privately planning for worst-case scenarios. Over the next 2 years, Shackleton would lead one of history's greatest survival epics. He navigated treacherous seas in a small lifeboat, crossed unmapped glaciers, and ultimately rescued every single member of his crew. His secret wasn't fearlessness. It was his ability to transform fear into strategic focus. Modern military research has extensively studied how elite special forces units maintain cognitive function under extreme stress. The findings reveal that top performers don't try to eliminate stress. They learn to harness it. Navy SEALs use techniques like box breathing and tactical pause to regulate their physiological response to threat, allowing them to think clearly when others would panic. These insights have profound implications for everyday crisis management. Whether facing professional challenges, personal emergencies, or life-altering decisions, the ability to maintain mental clarity under pressure often determines success or failure. Jordan Matthews, a paramedic with Denver's Emergency Response Unit, discovered this truth early in his career. During his first major crisis, a multi-vehicle accident with several critical patients, he found himself overwhelmed by the chaos. His training seemed to evaporate as adrenaline flooded his system, leading to delayed decisions and second-guessing. This experience prompted Jordan to study crisis response psychology. He learned that the key to maintaining composure isn't trying to stay calm. It's having systematic responses that override emotional reactions. He developed what he calls his reset ritual, a 3-second routine combining focused breathing with rapid situation assessment. When facing high-pressure situations, Jordan would first acknowledge his stress response rather than fighting it. Then he'd execute his reset ritual, creating a micro-pause that allowed his training to override his instincts. Finally, he'd focus solely on the next critical action, avoiding the paralysis of trying to solve everything at once. The transformation in his performance was remarkable. Within a year, Jordan became known for his exceptional grace under pressure. During one particularly challenging emergency, a mass casualty incident during a blizzard, his ability to maintain clear thinking while others struggled helped save multiple lives. The techniques that enabled Jordan's transformation are applicable across all types of crises. Psychological distancing involves mentally stepping back from a situation's emotional impact to view it objectively. Instead of thinking, "This is a disaster," trained crisis managers ask, "What does this situation require?" Triage thinking focuses on identifying and addressing the most critical issues first, rather than trying to solve everything simultaneously. This prevents cognitive overwhelm and ensures resources are directed where they're most needed. Reset rituals provide a structured way to break the panic cycle and regain mental control. These can be as simple as 3 deep breaths or as complex as a full situational assessment routine. Modern research in performance psychology has validated these approaches. Studies show that individuals trained in crisis response techniques maintain higher cognitive function under stress, make better decisions, and achieve better outcomes in emergency situations. The applications extend far beyond emergency services. Business leaders facing market crashes, parents handling family crises, or individuals navigating personal challenges can all benefit from these principles. When chaos hits, most people let fear dictate their actions, but the best decision-makers turn fear into focus. Your challenge. Next time you face a stressful situation, practice pausing and identifying the single most important action rather than reacting emotionally. With training, you'll become the person people turn to in a crisis, because you will be unshakable. Chapter 10. Fearless Action. Breaking Through Mental Barriers. In 1962, as the Mercury Atlas 6 spacecraft sat ready on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral, history was about to be made. John Glenn, strapped inside the tiny capsule, prepared to become the first American to orbit Earth. The mission carried unprecedented risks. No American had spent more than 15 minutes in space before. The intense pressure had caused previous astronauts' heart rates to spike dangerously high during simulations, often reaching 170 beats per minute. Yet as Mission Control monitored Glenn's vital signs, they witnessed something remarkable. His heart rate remained steady, never exceeding 100 beats per minute, even as the massive rocket engines ignited beneath him. This wasn't just good fortune or natural composure. Glenn had systematically trained his mind to override fear, developing what psychologists now call stress inoculation. The human brain evolved to treat uncertainty as a threat, triggering a cascade of physiological responses designed for immediate survival. This worked well when our ancestors faced predators, but in modern life, this same fear response often becomes our greatest limitation. Fear doesn't just affect how we feel, it fundamentally alters how we think and decide. Neuroscience research reveals that when fear activates, blood flow actually decreases to the brain's decision-making centers. Options that seem obvious in calm moments become invisible under stress. The mind creates false dichotomies, fight or flight, all or nothing, eliminating the nuanced choices that often lead to the best outcomes. Amelia Earhart understood this dynamic intimately. Before her historic 1932 solo flight across the Atlantic, she faced not just the technical challenges of early aviation, but also the psychological burden of being the first woman to attempt such a feat. The pressure was immense. Previous attempts by other pilots had ended in disaster. In her personal journals, Earhart wrote about experiencing intense fear before every flight. But rather than letting this fear paralyze her, she developed a systematic approach to managing it. She would acknowledge the fear, analyze its specific components, and then methodically address each concern through preparation and practice. "The most difficult thing is the decision to act," she wrote. "The rest is merely tenacity." This insight captures a crucial truth about fear. It's most powerful before action begins. Once we start moving, fear often loses its grip. Modern sports psychology has validated this approach through research on elite athletes. Studies show that top performers don't experience less fear than others. They've simply trained themselves to act despite it. This ability isn't innate. It's developed through consistent exposure to challenging situations. The exposure and execution technique builds on this understanding. Instead of trying to eliminate fear, which is both impossible and counterproductive, this method focuses on building the capacity to function effectively while experiencing fear. Marcus, a senior executive at a global technology firm, discovered this principle through necessity. Early in his career, his fear of public speaking was so severe that he would become physically ill before presentations. This fear was limiting his advancement and undermining his leadership potential. Rather than avoiding presentations or seeking quick fixes, Marcus committed to a systematic approach. He began with small team meetings, deliberately placing himself in situations that triggered mild anxiety. As his comfort grew, he gradually increased the stakes. Larger audiences, more important presentations, higher pressure situations. The key wasn't that the fear disappeared. It didn't. Instead, Marcus developed what psychologists call fear tolerance, the ability to maintain clear thinking and effective action even while experiencing anxiety. Within a year, he had transformed from someone who dreaded speaking to a confident presenter who could engage audiences of hundreds. This same principle applies across all domains where fear limits potential. Whether it's fear of failure holding back entrepreneurs, fear of rejection preventing personal connections, or fear of change keeping people trapped in unfulfilling situations. The solution isn't to wait for courage, but to act despite fear. The science behind this approach is clear. Each time we face fear and act anyway, we create new neural pathways that override the brain's default survival response. This doesn't just apply to the specific fear being confronted. It generalizes, making us more resilient across all areas of life. Chapter 11. Decisive Action Under Uncertainty. On May 2, 2011, President Barack Obama sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by his most trusted military and intelligence advisors. The atmosphere crackled with tension as they monitored Operation Neptune Spear, the mission to capture or kill Osama bin Laden. The intelligence was imperfect, with analysts estimating only a 60 to 70% chance that bin Laden was actually in the compound. A failed mission could trigger an international crisis, destabilize relations with Pakistan, and cost American lives. For months, Obama had weighed the options. Each carried significant risks. A missile strike would minimize American casualties, but destroy crucial intelligence and leave uncertainty about bin Laden's fate. A ground assault would provide confirmation, but put Special Forces operators at extreme risk. The diplomatic implications of either choice were staggering. The intelligence community remained divided. Some argued for more surveillance, more data, more certainty. But Obama understood a fundamental truth about leadership. Waiting for perfect information often means missing the opportunity to act. In that moment, he demonstrated what separates exceptional decision-makers from the rest: the ability to act decisively with incomplete information. The decision to launch the raid exemplifies the core principle of strategic decision-making under uncertainty. While others might have waited for more intelligence or sought diplomatic alternatives, Obama recognized that sometimes the costliest decision is no decision at all. This pattern of decisive action in the face of uncertainty has shaped history repeatedly. Consider Dwight D. Eisenhower's monumental decision to launch the D-Day invasion. The weather was questionable, intelligence about German defenses was incomplete, and his advisors were split. The operation had only a 50-50 chance of success, yet Eisenhower knew that waiting for perfect conditions would mean losing the strategic initiative. In his personal diary, Eisenhower wrote, "I made the decision. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." This wasn't bravado. It was the clear-eyed acceptance that leadership means making hard calls without the comfort of certainty. Modern neuroscience helps explain why decisive action under uncertainty is so challenging. The brain's amygdala, responsible for processing fear and uncertainty, can trigger a freeze response when faced with incomplete information. This made sense for our ancestors avoiding predators, but in today's complex world, this hesitation often leads to missed opportunities and compounding problems. Research reveals that leaders who excel at uncertain decisions share a common trait. They've trained themselves to act on probability rather than certainty. They understand that while perfect information is impossible, probability allows for calculated risks. The decide, commit, adjust framework emerged from studying military commanders, emergency room doctors, and crisis leaders, professionals who regularly make high-stakes decisions with imperfect information. The model breaks down into three critical components. Decide. Make the best choice possible with available information within a set time frame. Analysis is important, but it must have limits. Commit. Once a decision is made, throw full resources and energy behind it. Half-hearted execution of a bold decision is often worse than no decision at all. Adjust. Maintain flexibility to adapt as new information emerges. Strong leaders aren't afraid to modify their approach when circumstances change. Elena Martinez's story illustrates this framework in action. As the founder of a rapidly growing tech startup, she initially paralyzed herself seeking perfect candidates for key positions. Every hire felt like a bet-the-company decision. She would extend interview processes for months, seeking absolute certainty about each candidate. The result? Top talent accepted other offers while she deliberated. Her company's growth stalled as crucial positions remained unfilled. The turning point came when a mentor shared a crucial insight. A good decision now is better than a perfect decision too late. Elena adopted the decide, commit, adjust model. She set clear hiring timeframes, no more than 3 weeks from first interview to offer. She committed fully to each hire, providing robust onboarding and support. When occasional hires didn't work out, she adjusted quickly, rather than seeing it as a failure of the process. Within 6 months, her company had filled key positions and accelerated its growth. More importantly, Elena had developed the confidence to make rapid decisions across all aspects of her business. Her company's valuation tripled within the next year. This same principle applies across all domains where uncertainty creates paralysis. Whether it's career changes, business investments, or personal relationships, waiting for perfect certainty often means waiting forever. The key is not to eliminate uncertainty, it's to act decisively despite it. The research is clear. Leaders who excel at uncertain decisions don't have special predictive powers. Instead, they've developed specific mental frameworks. They focus on probability rather than certainty, understanding that most decisions are about playing the odds intelligently. They set clear decision deadlines, preventing analysis paralysis from taking hold. They maintain strategic flexibility, ready to adjust course as new information emerges. They accept that some decisions will be wrong, viewing mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. These skills aren't innate. They can be developed through deliberate practice. Start with smaller decisions, gradually building comfort with uncertainty. Pay attention to both successful and unsuccessful outcomes, analyzing what information was truly crucial versus what was just noise. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty, but to act effectively despite it. As Obama noted after the bin Laden raid, "We had done our homework. We had prepared rigorously. But at some point, you have to trust your judgment and take the leap." Tough decisions don't wait for perfect clarity. They demand action in the face of uncertainty. Your challenge this week? Identify one significant decision you've been postponing while waiting for more information. Set a firm deadline, no more than 7 days out. When that deadline arrives, make your call based on whatever information you have. No more waiting, no more hesitation, just decisive action. Chapter 12. Turning Failure into Fuel. In 1985, Steve Jobs stood before Apple's board of directors, his heart pounding as they stripped him of all operational duties at the company he had co-founded. The man who had revolutionized personal computing found himself escorted from the building, his dreams seemingly shattered. The press painted him as a volatile one-hit wonder whose success had been luck rather than skill. At just 30 years old, Jobs faced what many would consider a career-ending humiliation. The world watched, expecting him to retreat into obscurity. Instead, Jobs did something remarkable. He started over. Within weeks, he began planning his next venture, Next Computer. When that company struggled to find its footing, he didn't give up. He purchased a small computer graphics division from Lucasfilm, transforming it into Pixar Animation Studios. Each setback became a building block for his next move. "I didn't see it then, but getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me," Jobs later reflected. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. "It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." This pattern of transforming catastrophic failure into extraordinary success isn't unique to Jobs. History's most impactful leaders and innovators share a common trait. They don't just recover from failure. They systematically mine it for insights that fuel their next breakthrough. Observe Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. Instead of accepting this verdict on his abilities, he used the rejection as motivation, practicing before school, during lunch breaks, and late into the night. He turned the pain of failure into a relentless work ethic that would later define his legendary career. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job as an anchor in Baltimore, with producers calling her unfit for TV news. Rather than accepting their judgment, she analyzed why traditional news reporting didn't suit her strengths. This led her to discover her true calling in talk show hosting, where her emotional intelligence and ability to connect with people could shine. Her failure in news became the catalyst for building a media empire. Thomas Edison's journey to inventing the practical light bulb involved over 1,000 failed attempts. When a reporter asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times, Edison replied, "I have not failed 1,000 times. I have successfully discovered 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb." This mindset, viewing each failure as valuable data, enabled him to systematically eliminate what didn't work until he found what did. Research reveals that entrepreneurs who have previously failed are more likely to succeed in their next venture compared to first-time entrepreneurs. Why? because failure, when properly analyzed, creates a type of intelligence that can't be gained any other way. This failure intelligence develops pattern recognition, improves risk assessment, and builds resilience, all crucial components of superior decision-making. Groundbreaking research on mindset shows that people who view failures as learning opportunities develop greater cognitive flexibility than those who see failure as a reflection of their abilities. This enhanced mental adaptability leads to better problem-solving skills and more innovative thinking under pressure. The key difference between those who let failure destroy them and those who use it as fuel lies in their response system. Elite performers across all fields, from sports to business to the arts, share a common approach to processing failure. This system, known as the failure-to-feedback loop, breaks down into three critical components. First, they conduct an immediate, emotionally neutral analysis of what went wrong. Instead of wallowing in shame or making excuses, they treat the failure like a scientist examining data. What exactly happened? What were the contributing factors? Where did the breakdown occur? Second, they extract specific, actionable lessons from the failure. These aren't vague platitudes like "try harder next time," but precise insights that can inform future decisions. What assumptions were incorrect? What signals were missed? What capabilities need development? Third, they create immediate opportunities to apply these lessons, treating each failure as a dress rehearsal for future success. This rapid implementation prevents the paralysis that often follows failure and turns negative experiences into positive momentum. Jake's story illustrates this system in action. As a competitive chess player, Jake used to spiral into depression after losses, sometimes avoiding tournaments for months. His rating plateaued as fear of failure began affecting his playstyle, making him overly cautious and predictable. Everything changed when he studied how chess grandmasters analyze their defeats. He discovered they treat lost games as valuable data, meticulously reviewing each move to understand where their thinking went wrong. Jake began recording his emotional state, physical condition, and thought process during matches, creating a comprehensive failure analysis system. Instead of avoiding stronger opponents, he actively sought them out, viewing each loss as an opportunity to identify weaknesses in his game. Within a year, his rating jumped 300 points, and he won his first major tournament. More importantly, he developed a relationship with failure that transformed it from an enemy into an ally. This same principle applies across all domains where growth and achievement matter. Whether in business, relationships, or personal development, the ability to extract value from failure separates those who plateau from those who continuously advance. Consider how this applies to decision-making under pressure. Most people make the same mistakes repeatedly because they never truly analyze their failures. They either ignore them, denial, blame others, deflection, or beat themselves up, self-sabotage. None of these responses generate the insights needed for better future decisions. The research is clear. Individuals and organizations that systematically study their failures make better decisions over time. They develop what psychologists call failure resilience, the ability to maintain clear thinking and strategic action despite setbacks. This skill isn't innate, it's developed through specific practices. They maintain failure logs, documenting not just what went wrong, but their thought process leading up to the failure. This creates a personal database of lessons learned. They seek feedback immediately after failures, while the experience is fresh and details are clear. Waiting too long allows rationalizations and false narratives to cloud the truth. They create safe spaces to discuss and analyze failures, recognizing that the greatest lessons often come from the most painful experiences. They set failure goals, specific targets for experimentation and risk-taking that make failure not just acceptable, but necessary for growth. Remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a critical component of it. Every setback, every mistake, every painful loss contains within it the seeds of future victory. The only question is whether you have the courage and wisdom to harvest them. Your challenge this week? Select one significant failure from your recent past. Don't choose something trivial. Pick a failure that still stings when you think about it. Now, complete this 3-step process. Write down exactly what happened, focusing on facts rather than emotions. Identify 3 specific lessons you can extract from this experience. Create 1 immediate opportunity to apply these lessons in your current situation. Chapter 13. The 3-Second Reset. On November 10, 1984, tennis champion Ivan Lendl stood on center court at Madison Square Garden, his breath visible in the cold air, watching John McEnroe dominate the ATP Finals. Down 2 sets and trailing in the third, Lendl faced what seemed like certain defeat. The crowd had already written him off. McEnroe was playing near-perfect tennis, and momentum appeared unstoppable. But in that crucial moment, Lendl demonstrated a skill more valuable than any forehand or serve. Instead of dwelling on lost points or spiraling into frustration, he executed what sports psychologists now call instant mental recovery. Between points, Lendl would turn his back to the court, take exactly 3 seconds to reset his mind, then return to position as if the previous point never happened. This systematic mental reset allowed him to think clearly, adjust his strategy, and gradually shift the match's momentum. Over the next 3 hours, Lendl mounted one of tennis's greatest comebacks, winning 7-5 in the 5th set. When interviewed later about this remarkable turnaround, Lendl revealed that his success wasn't about physical conditioning or technique. It was his ability to reset his mind instantly after each setback. The science behind rapid mental recovery reveals why this skill proves so crucial in high-pressure situations. Research shows that the brain processes failure in 2 distinct phases. The first phase, lasting approximately 3 seconds, involves pure emotional response, frustration, anger, or disappointment. The second phase, which can last anywhere from minutes to days, involves cognitive processing, analyzing what went wrong and determining how to respond. Most people get trapped in extended emotional processing, letting initial reactions spiral into prolonged negative states. This extended dwelling triggers a cascade of stress hormones that impair decision-making abilities and reaction times. Studies show that performance drops by up to 50% when people remain emotionally engaged with previous failures instead of resetting for the next challenge. The fascinating case of NASA's Apollo 12 mission illustrates this principle in a life-or-death scenario. Just 36 seconds after launch, with the spacecraft traveling at over 1,000 miles per hour, lightning struck twice, knocking out all navigation systems and electrical equipment. Most people would have frozen in panic. After all, they were literally flying blind in a multi-billion-dollar spacecraft with 3 lives at stake. But flight controller Alan Bean demonstrated extraordinary mental recovery ability. Instead of dwelling on the terrifying situation, he instantly reset his focus to problem-solving mode. Within seconds, he recalled an obscure procedure from his training, the SCE to AUX switch configuration. This quick mental reset and subsequent action restored power to critical systems, saving the mission from certain abort. Bean later explained that his ability to recover quickly came from NASA's intensive training in what they called productive failure response. Astronauts were taught to acknowledge problems instantly, but then immediately shift focus to solution finding rather than emotional processing. This 3-second mental reset protocol became standard training for all future missions. Modern neuroscience explains why this works. When facing setbacks, the brain's amygdala, responsible for emotional processing, activates first. If unchecked, it can hijack the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logical thinking and decision-making. However, a deliberate mental reset within the first 3 seconds can interrupt this emotional hijacking, allowing rational thought processes to take over. This same principle applies across all high-performance domains. Special forces operators use similar techniques during combat missions. When plans go wrong, as they often do in battle, they're trained to reset their minds within 3 seconds, preventing emotional responses from clouding tactical decisions. This skill has saved countless lives in situations where dwelling on mistakes could prove fatal. The business world offers equally compelling examples. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, implemented what he calls mistake meditation move forward protocols at his firm. When traders make losing investments, they're trained to acknowledge the loss, take 3 seconds to reset, then return to market analysis with a clear mind. This practice helped Bridgewater become one of the most successful hedge funds in history. Hannah's story particularly demonstrates how this skill transforms performance under pressure. As a professional poker player, Hannah used to struggle with tilt, the emotional spiral that follows a big loss. One bad hand would affect her decision-making for hours, leading to increasingly poor choices and mounting losses. Everything changed when she learned about the 3-second reset technique from a sports psychologist. She began practicing deliberate mental resets between hands. 3 seconds to acknowledge the loss, extract any useful information, then completely clear her mind for the next decision. Within 6 months, her consistency improved dramatically, and she became known as one of the most mentally resilient players on the circuit. The difference wasn't in my technical skills, Hannah explains. It was in my recovery speed. Bad hands still happened, but they stopped affecting my next decision. That's when my results really took off. The technique works through a simple but powerful process. First second, acknowledge the setback without judgment. Simply observe what happened without emotional attachment. Second, extract any immediately useful information. What's the one thing you can learn from this? Second, reset your mental state completely, focusing only on the next action or decision. This 3-second framework proves particularly effective because it matches the brain's natural processing rhythms. Studies in cognitive psychology show that 3 seconds represents an optimal window for interrupting negative thought patterns before they become entrenched. The corporate world offers numerous examples of this principle in action. When Microsoft's Windows Vista launch failed spectacularly in 2007, CEO Steve Ballmer demonstrated remarkable recovery speed. Instead of dwelling on the massive setback, he immediately reset the company's focus toward developing Windows 7, which became one of Microsoft's most successful releases. The technique's power lies in its simplicity and immediate applicability. Whether facing a business setback, personal failure, or competitive challenge, the 3-second reset provides a clear protocol for maintaining mental clarity under pressure. Implementation requires practice, but follows a straightforward progression. Start with small setbacks, daily annoyances, or minor failures, to build the mental muscle memory for quick resets. Gradually apply the technique to larger challenges, maintaining the same 3-second discipline regardless of the stakes. Create a physical trigger, like taking a specific breath or making a particular gesture, to initiate the reset sequence. The goal isn't to ignore failures or suppress emotions, but rather to process them efficiently, without letting them impair future performance. This skill proves particularly valuable in today's fast-paced world, where the ability to recover quickly from setbacks often matters more than avoiding them altogether. Elite performers across all fields share this common trait, not an absence of failure, but an extraordinary ability to reset and refocus instantly. They've learned that dwelling on mistakes costs more than the mistakes themselves. Your challenge this week? Practice the 3-second reset after every setback, no matter how small. When you miss your morning alarm, make a mistake at work, or face any other daily challenge, implement the 3-step process. Acknowledge, extract, reset. Time yourself. 3 seconds maximum. No analyzing, no dwelling, no emotional spiraling. Just reset and move forward. Remember, the speed of your success depends on the speed of your recovery. Master the 3-second reset, and you'll develop an unshakable foundation for peak performance under any circumstances. Chapter 14. Building Unbreakable Mental Strength. In 1997, J.K. Rowling sat in an Edinburgh cafe, nursing a cold cup of coffee while her baby daughter slept beside her. The rejection letters from publishers lay crumpled in her bag, 12 of them, each a reminder of what the world thought about her dreams. The heat barely worked in her small apartment, and her bank account held mere pennies. By society's standards, she had hit rock bottom. But in that moment, something extraordinary happened. Instead of letting despair consume her, Rowling made a decision that would alter not just her life, but the lives of millions. She chose to view her situation not as defeat, but as liberation. I was set free, she later reflected, because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. This mental shift, from viewing rock bottom as an endpoint to seeing it as a foundation, exemplifies the core principle of lasting mental strength. It wasn't about temporary motivation or positive thinking. It was about fundamentally rewiring how she processed adversity. The science behind mental resilience reveals fascinating insights into how the brain adapts to challenges. Research shows that mental toughness operates like a muscle. It grows stronger through strategic stress and recovery cycles. When people face adversity with the right mindset, their neural pathways actually reorganize, creating stronger connections in areas responsible for emotional regulation and decision-making. Tenzing Norgay's story provides a remarkable illustration of sustained mental strength. While Edmund Hillary became the face of the first successful Everest summit, few know about Norgay's decade-long preparation. Before the historic 1953 climb, he had attempted Everest 6 times, each ending in failure. But instead of becoming discouraged, he used each attempt to build both physical and mental endurance. What set Norgay apart wasn't just his physical conditioning. It was his systematic approach to mental preparation. Every morning, he would spend an hour in meditation, visualizing not just success, but also potential disasters. He trained himself to stay calm in whiteout conditions by practicing rope work blindfolded. When other climbers complained about the cold, he would intentionally expose himself to harsh conditions, teaching his mind to embrace discomfort. "The mountain doesn't know who was born where," Norgay once said. "It only knows who has prepared their mind for its challenges." This philosophy, that mental preparation precedes physical achievement, became his legacy to future generations of climbers. Modern neuroscience explains why Norgay's approach worked so effectively. When faced with extreme conditions, the brain typically triggers a stress response that impairs decision-making and depletes energy. However, through systematic exposure and mental conditioning, individuals can rewire their stress response, maintaining clarity and stamina even in crisis situations. This principle extends far beyond mountaineering. Consider the transformation of Daniel Torres, a Special Forces candidate who initially struggled with the brutal selection process. During his first attempt at selection, Daniel quit after 36 hours, overwhelmed by sleep deprivation and physical exhaustion. But rather than accepting defeat, he spent the next year rebuilding his mental foundation. Every morning, Daniel would begin with what he called mental priming, a 20-minute routine combining cold exposure, breathing exercises, and visualization. He would intentionally create difficult situations for himself, like working out in uncomfortable conditions, or fasting during intense training sessions. Most importantly, he reframed every failure as a data point, rather than a defeat. "I stopped trying to avoid pain," Daniel explains. "Instead, I started seeing it as feedback, information my body and mind were giving me about where I needed to grow stronger." When he returned to selection a year later, the physical challenges hadn't changed, but his mental processing had. He completed the course, earning his place among the elite few who make it through. The transformation process follows 3 key phases. Mental priming. This involves daily practices that strengthen your psychological foundation. Like an athlete warming up before competition, mental priming prepares your mind to handle challenges effectively. This might include meditation, visualization, or strategic discomfort training. Controlled exposure. Systematically exposing yourself to increasingly difficult situations builds mental calluses. Start small. Maybe it's taking cold showers or having tough conversations, and gradually increase the intensity. The key is consistency rather than intensity. Failure conditioning. This involves deliberately putting yourself in situations where failure is likely, then practicing rapid recovery. The goal isn't to fail less, but to build faster recovery speed and extract maximum learning from each setback. Chapter 15. Burning Your Ships, the Power of Total Commitment. In 1519, Hernán Cortés landed on the shores of Mexico with 600 men and an audacious plan. Rather than preserving his fleet as an escape route, he made a decision that would echo through centuries. He ordered his own ships burned. As the flames consumed their only path home, his men watched in disbelief. Cortez's message was crystal clear. Retreat was no longer an option. This radical act of commitment transformed his soldiers from mere adventurers into conquerors. With no way back, they pushed forward with unprecedented determination, ultimately toppling the mighty Aztec Empire. The psychology behind Cortez's strategy reveals a fundamental truth about human nature. When we eliminate our escape routes, we tap into reserves of strength and determination we never knew we possessed. Most people dilute their potential by keeping one foot in and one foot out, maintaining backup plans that secretly undermine their primary goals. Modern neuroscience supports this insight. Research shows that when the brain detects alternative options, it automatically diverts energy and resources to maintaining those possibilities, energy that could be spent pursuing the main objective. This option preservation actually weakens our commitment and performance on our primary path. Observe Elon Musk's journey after selling PayPal. Instead of diversifying his newfound wealth or keeping a financial safety net, he poured every dollar into Tesla and SpaceX. This wasn't reckless abandon, it was strategic commitment. When asked about this all-in approach, Musk explained, "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." The decision to burn his financial ships forced Musk to innovate solutions that more cautious entrepreneurs might have missed. When Tesla nearly went bankrupt in 2008, he didn't retreat to a backup plan. He doubled down, investing his last remaining capital and taking out personal loans to keep the company alive. This total commitment ultimately led to breakthrough innovations in electric vehicle technology and space exploration. The psychology of total commitment operates on three key principles. First, elimination of cognitive load. When you remove alternative options, your brain stops wasting energy on what-if scenarios and focuses entirely on making your chosen path work. This mental clarity leads to better decision-making and more creative problem-solving. Second, identity reinforcement. Once you publicly commit to a path with no retreat, your brain automatically aligns your identity with that commitment. This creates a powerful psychological drive to succeed, as failure would challenge your self-image. Third, stress adaptation. When you know there's no plan B, your mind stops searching for escape routes and instead develops greater resilience and adaptability within your chosen path. Sophia's story perfectly illustrates these principles in action. For years, she balanced her corporate marketing job with her passion for music, telling herself the steady paycheck was just insurance while she pursued her dreams. But this safety net was actually holding her back, allowing her to avoid fully committing to her musical career. The turning point came when she attended a songwriting workshop and realized she was the only participant still hedging her bets. Everyone else had already taken the leap. That night, she made a decision that would transform her life. She wrote her resignation letter, canceled her lease, and committed to living off her savings while pursuing music full-time. "The moment I removed my backup plan, everything changed," Sophia recalls. "Suddenly, every minute counted. Every connection mattered. I stopped thinking about failure because failure wasn't an option anymore." Within 6 months, she had landed her first recording contract. When asked what made the difference, her new producer said it wasn't just her talent, it was her hunger, her absolute commitment to making it work. That's the power of burning your ships. The burn the ships method involves 3 strategic steps. Public declaration. Announce your commitment to key stakeholders in your life. This creates social accountability and makes retreat more costly than pushing forward. Resource alignment. Redirect all available resources, time, money, energy, toward your chosen path. Eliminate investments in backup plans or just-in-case scenarios. Identity shift. Start referring to yourself by your new identity, entrepreneur, artist, athlete, rather than your old one. This psychological reframing accelerates commitment and performance. The no plan B rule supplements this approach by establishing clear criteria for commitment decisions. If you're not willing to eliminate alternatives, you're not ready to commit. This doesn't mean acting recklessly, it means being honest about your level of conviction. Once you commit, treat backup plans as a form of self-sabotage. Every hour spent maintaining a safety net is an hour stolen from your primary goal. The 100% threshold principle completes the framework. Partial commitment produces partial results. Either you're all in or you're just experimenting. When faced with a decision, ask yourself, am I willing to burn my ships for this? If the answer is no, you're better off waiting until you find something worthy of total commitment. The most successful people in any field share this trait. They don't wait for certainty before committing. They create certainty through commitment. They understand that keeping options open feels safe, but actually undermines achievement. Your challenge for this week is simple but profound. Identify one area of your life where you've been keeping a backup plan, hedging your bets, or maintaining an escape route. Then make the decision to burn your ships. Write down exactly what you're committing to and what backup plans you're eliminating. Share this commitment with someone who will hold you accountable. Remember, this isn't about being reckless. It's about being resolute. When you remove the option of retreat, you force yourself to find a way forward. And in that commitment lies the seed of all great achievements. Conclusion. The ultimate test of mastery isn't just making good decisions. It's consistently executing them across all areas of life. Research in behavioral psychology shows that most people can make strong choices in isolated instances, but struggle to maintain that level of decision-making excellence over time. This is why even brilliant leaders sometimes make catastrophic mistakes. They lose sight of their principles under sustained pressure. Think of your decision-making ability as a muscle that needs constant exercise. Just as an athlete can't stay in peak condition by training occasionally, you can't maintain decision mastery without regular practice and systematic application. Remember, true mastery isn't about making perfect decisions. It's about maintaining consistent excellence over time, across all areas of life. The tools and strategies you've learned are not just techniques. They're the foundation of a new way of thinking and living. Your decision-making journey doesn't end here. It evolves into a lifelong practice of excellence. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to apply and refine your skills. Every setback becomes a chance to demonstrate resilience. Every success becomes proof that you're on the right path. The world's most successful people aren't just good decision-makers. They're consistently good decision-makers. They've built systems and habits that ensure their choices align with their goals, regardless of circumstances or pressure. You now have the tools to join their ranks. The question is, are you ready to commit to this level of excellence? Are you prepared to make this not just a skill set, but a way of life? Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.